Hello, my lovely viewers. I welcome you back to my studio. Today I will show you my little process of trialing new materials that I purchase. So this time it will be Fabriano mixed media paper. I really like using different types of paper because sometimes even using same materials you can get a very different result, and you can completely ruin your artwork, spend hours, and it will not look vibrant or lovely, or vice versa, it will look too bright and too sharp, and this is not what you were going for. That's why it's so important to know the paper that you are using is the right paper for the result that you want to achieve. In this video I'm going to test out this paper with many different materials. It says here that it is designed for drawing, pastel, acrylic and watercolor. So in this little trialing out video I will see how graphite pencils, soft pastels, watercolor, gouache, acrylics, pen, how all of those things interact with the surface of this paper, and you'll be able to see for yourself. At the end of the video I will do a little artwork to actually combine different materials and to create a total mixed media artwork. So make sure to watch till the end to see my verdict on it, and also to see if perhaps this is something that will be absolutely perfect to take your art to the next level, or maybe something to avoid next time you go into an art shop. So this little pad is more or less A4 size. It actually says that it's 250 GSM, so that's the heaviness of the paper. I know that a lot of mixed media paper actually uses much more sizing on the outside of the paper compared to, say, watercolor paper and things like that. So this is what I'm interested to find out, how this paper would actually respond, what kind of effects it will give us. Just from the observation, it actually feels really heavy. It actually feels heavier than, say, normal watercolor. 250 GSM almost feels more like closer to 300 GSM just by touch. It could possibly be because it is a little bit more stiffer because of that sizing that's applied. Okay, so I have just lined this piece of paper with different sections, different areas, so that I can show you and kind of experiment myself. As I said, this is the first time I'm trying this out, so I'm also excited to see what it performs like. But let's go ahead and see what pencils are like on this paper. Okay, first I will start with a cross-hatching technique just to see how it works. The pencil seems to go on quite nicely, just like with any other paper. Now this specific brand might be different with other brands. Sort of has a little bit of the texture on the paper, just a little bit. So if you're looking for a super smooth paper, this is not it. The texture is not too rough though, so you can still work on this fine. Okay, now let's try blending on this. So I've got my blending stick. It is blending quite well, but you do see some of the texture that is coming through from the paper. So if it's okay for your style of art, I guess this would work. But if you want that perfect smoothness, you know, almost like a sort of airbrushed look, then again this probably will get in the way of achieving this. Let's have a look how it works with tiny little details. So you know me, you know how I love creating really detailed things with using these pencils, tiny little pencils, mechanical ones. Yeah, it seems to work quite well. Okay, now I'm going to try and check how different erasers work on this paper. Let's blend it out a little bit. So the first rubber I'm going to try is a gum eraser. So let's see how it works on the blended out area. Yep, so you can see that there's still a little bit of the graphite just left there. You can see it. Yeah, it's definitely like a shadow, but let's see how it goes We see how I'm going and going and going. Yeah, there's quite a bit of smudging on this paper. So the way I look at it, it's probably not the perfect paper for creating very detailed, very contrasty things. So probably quite good for rough sketching if you're using it with a pencil. So let's see how the putty rubber works. It actually is doing a better job, I think, here. And let's see how it works on a really sort of an intense pencil. Yeah, as you can see, it's still doing the job, but it's not really removing everything, like, for example, something I would expect from a paper that's specifically designed for pencil drawing. So what would I say about this? I probably would not use this paper strictly for graphite pencil drawings, especially if I want to get into very detailed stuff, but it works on this paper. So if I'm trying to do a preliminary sketch, I'm pretty sure that I would have no problems with creating a preliminary sketch. Let's move on to pastels and see how pastels behave themselves on this paper. So I've got soft pastels, harder ones, the ones that are in a pencil shape, and softer ones, the ones that are in a little block form. First, I'm just going to give it the overall sort of a coating, like, for example, I would do if I was working on something large or if I had a background that I needed to cover. So this is what I normally do, and let's see how that responds. And let's see how it would blend with another color as well on this paper. Okay, so as you can see, again, the texture is coming through. So if this is what you want, then this is something that you would absolutely love. If you want a very smooth look, then I guess this will not be your ideal paper to work on. Now let's see how it blends. I'm going to use my finger because sometimes I use my fingers for blending. Never use fingers for blending graphite, but with soft pastels and charcoal sometimes it's okay, just because of how thick they are, so they get to absorb all the oils and moisture from your hand. So let's have a look. You see what happens? You see those little bits that are gathering on the side there? It means that this paper is not very good for holding on to the pastel. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but it just means that it will be a little bit harder to build up the layers, but we will try that out as well. Let's have a look. I really like how white this paper is. I think that's the reason why these pastels are coming up as such strong glowing colors. Okay, so let's start smudging with a smudge stick. There's a little bit of black on my smudge stick, so this is what's carrying through. This is a really good way if you want to really fill in any texture, and if you really want to just create this really dense sort of a smudge. I think it's working really well on this paper. What do you guys think? Okay, now let's see how building the color up with these soft pastel pencils would work. It actually feels quite nice working on this. It feels that the paper is quite grippy. So every time you make a line, you really feel like, you know, it's not sort of, how would I say it? It's not just sliding down. It feels really grippy with these ones. More so than with these ones for some reason. Perhaps because they are harder, so you can sort of press on quite a bit. And again, see, you can see that the texture is coming through. So a bit of gray. And now again, I'm gonna try and blend these out and see. Yeah, I find that these ones seem to work a little bit better on us than the block pastels, soft pastels, or chalk pastels sometimes people call them. Let's have a look over here. Yeah, you get a really nice smudge. Okay, so let's see how good this paper is at allowing me to build up the pastel. So far I can see that this one's much more buildable on here than this, but let's see how well I can deal with this and how many layers it would take. So I've got this one color that's pretty much 100% blocked in, so now I'm going to smudge it a little bit. It feels super soft now already, so it feels like I actually got rid of some of the tooth, you know, some of the texture on the paper. And remember, it doesn't matter how smooth your paper is, even if it's super smooth, you still have a little bit of a tooth on there. So let's see how the second layer goes on there. And these are not just one thin layer kind of applications. I'm trying to build up this color as much as I can. So this is the next one. So see, yeah, I still get quite a good coverage. So let's give this a little bit of a smudge. And let's go with a lighter color, like I'll go with the white, and let's see if I can add anything else on top of that. There you go. See, that's that. I guess that's the limit. So you know, you can build color up a little bit, but not as much as you would on the paper that is specifically designed for a soft pastel application. Okay, so now let's have a look at what we can achieve on this paper when we're working with pens. So I've got different kinds of pens here, different thickness, different type, and I'm gonna try them out as well. So let's have a look. So this is quite a thick ink pen. That's actually really lovely for the pen. What I like about this is that if you go quite strong, you can create a really thick line, and then if you go on the side like this, it actually gives you more of the variety, whereas some papers, especially when they're quite fluffy, you don't get that almost nothing sort of a thin look when you use the pen on the side. So I guess that's the beauty of having that extra sizing on top. Yeah, that's a very interesting result. Now let's try a different pen. So this is gel ballpoint pen. Again, it's working beautifully on here. Yeah, I absolutely love working with pen on this. So let's see the sideways, the thin line application. Yeah, look at that. And then the really thick. Wonderful. Now let's try pressure. So if I use it on the same angle, but I go with quite a bit of pressure, and remember this paper feels really nice and thick even though it's just 250 GSM, so you can give it a good, you know, push. And now let's go with the light hand. Yeah, see, you can see a bit of a difference there as well. I quite like this. This is actually surprisingly cool. Okay, this paper for drawing so far is behaving so much better in the result that it gives me with the ink. I think I like it more than some drawing papers, I'd say. Very clean, very precise. Another gel ink ball pen. I just want to try something else. I've got this white pen. I just want to see how well it will receive it on top of the black pen here. And this is a uniball ear. I'm not sure. That's another really thin sort of a ink ballpoint. Look how beautiful this paper works with pressure. So if I go and then I go lightly, you can really see the difference. These are just the regular, you know, well, they're not real regular pens, but these are the pens that you can get in the stationery, so I'm quite liking it with the pen. If you are enjoying this video, make sure that you go and you check out my Patreon page, where I create a lot of different tutorials, step-by-step instructional videos, and really long videos, you know, where I can show you the full process from the beginning till the end, and a lot of really cool, very in-depth information that you can get over there that you probably would not be able to find here on YouTube. So make sure to go and check it out. Okay, so next is to try out the watercolor. So I will try watercolor pencils and I will try watercolor itself, the classic watercolor. If you are interested to see any videos on any more of the techniques, please make sure that you look through my channel, because you will be able to find more videos there that go more in depth on these subjects and tutorials of why you do things a certain way and how you use the different techniques and different materials. So here I'm just applying a little bit of water just to see how the paper behaves itself with a lot of moisture application. So let's have a look. I have this area here that's got a lot of water. Now, just like we normally would with watercolor, I'll just give it a couple of seconds for the water to get inside the paper so that we don't have a lot of flooding on the surface. I can already tell you that this paper is taking a little bit longer to absorb the water than normal watercolor paper. I would say both hot pressed and cold pressed. So, and it's not really doing it really evenly as well. Like I can see this area here is already dry while there's still a puddle up on this area. Okay, let's use a nice rich color so we can see quite a bit of what paint does in this situation. So here, remember, this was really wet just a moment ago, and as I said, see, this area is still quite damp, and in fact there's quite a bit of surface water here, and here it's already dry. See, I'm doing a line and it's really sharp. Okay, again, just like with pastels, you can see beautiful vibrancy in the color because of how vividly white this paper is. Now let's see, have a look how good it is at us being able to remove the paper. Wow, sorry, paint, not paper. Look at that. Look at that, this is almost has taken it back to white, even though this color is quite a staining color, so normally it's quite hard to remove it. Yeah, and I guess this is again that sizing of the paper that goes on top of the paper that is in play here, because it keeps your paint sitting on the surface for longer before actually taking it into the depth of the paper. It's much easier to remove it back to almost the original color. But even knowing about the sizing, this is still very surprising. I'm actually quite wowed by this effect. Let's have a look at how it handles blending. How easy is it to blend two colors together? We all know that with watercolor it's an important thing to be able to achieve that. A little bit of Prussian green. Old green. Yeah, it does quite a good job, although I do have a feeling that if I was trying to create this on a larger area, I might run into more problems. I can definitely tell and feel the difference between working on this paper and working on the watercolor paper, in the way that this paper can create a much stronger, harsher line. Now, this is something that would be absolutely loved by one group of artists and absolutely hated by the other. So it would mainly depend on the kind of technique that you like to use. If you really like working in a much more precise ways, I guess this paper would be absolutely perfect. Now with larger washes, I suspect this paper will create a little bit of a problem for you. But having said that, look at that beautiful transition. I love this. Now our next test is the transition of paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a lot of water here, and then I'm going to go for a strong color. Let's go for a bright one, something like Open Rosa. It's not a very stable, but a very beautiful bright color, and just let it run while there's a lot of surface water on the paper. See how it sort of spreads. Let's try another color. Now let's find a core color. Core colors tend to have that really strong way of pushing other colors out of the way. So this is a core just because they have a different binder. So this is dioxazine purple in core. You see how that happens? And you can see just how, you know, beautifully free-flowing that is. But here you can see that the paper is already drying, so there isn't as much of that blooming that's happening there already. Now next one is probably the one that would be loved by anyone who loves details, and I have a feeling that this paper will be perfect for this. Let's see how it behaves if we're working on something small or something super detailed. Some people love to work on large scale, some on a tiny small scale, you know, different styles. So all of you who are watching, you'd be all seeing how you can involve this into your way of painting. And look at this. Oh, this is so perfectly smooth. So I guess if you're into pattern making or any kind of decorative or anything detailed, maybe you're into miniature. And what I find really surprising about this is that even though it has a little bit of texture, this texture completely disappears once you start to work on little details. Okay, and now one more test. Now this test is quite important for people that work a lot with watercolor. It's the test of removing the paint back when the paint is dry. I'd say maybe it's been about 20 minutes since I've done this. Probably didn't take as long in the video, but that's, guys, the magic of editing, huh? So here, let's see if I add more water and try and move this paint around like this and then absorb it back. This would not be as light as this, but it's still quite a good result. So for those of you who sometimes like to work back into the paint, I would suggest this paper again because it lets paint sit on the surface. It works so well for these little things. So I quite like this paper for probably, I'd say, smaller works. I probably would not use it for large scale artworks that I would create with watercolor, but I think it would be really beautiful for any kind of floral art because you can create these beautiful crisp lines, you know. So if, for example, for petals, and all the little textures that you'd be able to create with this is absolutely beautiful. Now let's have a look at what it would do with watercolor pencils. Beauty of watercolor pencils is that you can use them dry like normal pencils. Oh, look at that, they're super creamy on this paper, almost like oil sort of a based pencils. It's quite interesting. Let's see the same. You can, let's see how dark we can go with this. As I said, guys, I haven't tried this before, so this is quite interesting for me to experiment. Wow, look at the color that you can achieve with this, just with completely sort of banishing the paper texture. And it's really easy to do on this paper as well. Sometimes things like that can take quite a while to do. Okay, now let's see what will happen once we add water. It's always exciting with watercolor pencils because you get such a change. I mean, these are good quality watercolor pencils, but the kind of pretty much 100% dilution, I can't see, once I go a few times over this, I can't see any marks that are left by the pencil. This is also something to note if you like to achieve that result in your work. So it's perfect if you want to completely dissolve them. Now let's have a look at, yeah, the same thing. Look how beautiful. Okay, so now let's see how the really intense colors would behave in this situation. Oh wow, look at this. I can actually use this to paint something. Yeah, that's looking lovely. So definitely an interesting result. So I didn't expect it to go so well for watercolor pencils. And again, look how beautifully bright they are. So this is a little tester that I've made for all of the colors that I have, just in case if I need to, you know, match something up. But have a look. So these are the two colors. Look how intense, how much more light from within this paper actually gives them. This would be just a watercolor paper, I think maybe 200 or 250 GSM. So yeah, I quite like those results. Okay, so on the bottom here I would like to try acrylics and gouache paint. They are similar but different. The difference is with acrylics, they sort of almost like plasticky, you know, they give you that very shiny sort of a look. Well, not always shiny, sometimes they're matte as well, but very sort of plasticky, thick. You can build them up, and once they're dry, it's final. You can't dilute it with water. So let's have a look at what type of a surface this gives us for working with acrylics. Now, acrylics is one of my sort of main mediums that I work on as an artist. You can find lots of videos on my channel if you'd like to see how I use acrylics. But it's quite interesting to see. So for example, if you want to create some sketches and things, how the paint would behave here. Well, I'll tell you this, it dries very quickly. So this is already dry, so I will not be able to blend anything in. But then again, if you like blending, you'd probably be better off using a watercolor or oil paint on top. Yeah, again, this paper, even though it does have texture, it actually disappears once you start using acrylics on it. How interesting. You can get really sharp, very perfect lines. Now I'm using an angular brush, which is perfect for creating larger things, and also you can do little things with the tip. So let's see if we can still mix some in. No, it's quite dry. That green layer is quite dry, and see, it's just happened like within minutes, not even minutes, like maybe even seconds. It starts to dry as soon as you apply it. But I guess if you want to prolong your paper from absorbing the water from your paint, you could always apply a prep layer beforehand, let that dry, and it would work as an even stronger barrier between the fibers of the paper and the layer of your paint. So now let's have a look if we can get into little details using this paint. I suspect that you would get beautiful details with it. So this is still acrylic I'm using. Yeah, very similar to what we got here with watercolor. You can get the perfect lines. You can, yeah, this is gorgeous for really fine things. I would imagine this would be perfect for calligraphy. Those of you who love calligraphy, I think you would absolutely love working on this paper. Okay, so now let's have a look how it performs if we want to use it in a much more diluted way. Now, this is not what acrylics are designed for, but I know a lot of people love to use it for sketching, maybe preliminary works, maybe when people are planning out, artists planning out their works, to do a quick sketch, maybe trial out some colors. Yeah, again, here we have that beautiful luminosity thanks to that bright whiteness. Let's see how it behaves if we blend colors together here. Yeah, I guess because of the water it sort of stays there more fluid for a bit longer. I can see how this could really work for people who love to create really bright sort of a visual effects. Maybe for anyone who wants to use color in a very sharp way. Okay, so now let's have a look at how this paper behaves with gouache paint. So gouache paint is, again, very similar to acrylic paint, but really similar to watercolor as well. It's kind of that something that's right in the middle. You can dilute it over once it's dried, just like watercolor paint, but you work with it in a really thick way like you normally would with acrylic, or at least this is how it's intended. Remember, just because a paint is intended to use a certain way doesn't mean that you can't use or find a different way that you might like to use, as long as you keep up with things that are not going to ruin your painting over time. So here I've just squeezed a little bit of gouache paint onto the paper, and see, we can create different layers of thickness. So this is what it's like when it's applied in a thinner way with a thicker way. And you get quite a nice coverage on this paper, and again you get this beautiful luminosity. Like, I haven't mixed any white with this paint. And now let's see the red. And the overlapping. It's quite beautiful the way that it just, even though you saw how thick the layer was, you still get that really beautiful overlapping thing going on, you know, the transparency of it. It's lovely. And with gouache you get a really beautiful powdery finish when it dries, even when you've got a really thick layer. Let's have a look at how it behaves. Kind of a similar test to the one we did here with watercolor. Okay, so let's add a little bit of water and see if it's quite removable from this paper. I think this paper does a really good job. And again, this kind of a green is quite a staining green as well. So for those of you who work with different colors and pigments and sort of take notice of different pigments, you'd know that, you know, some colors tend to stain paper more than others. So this is quite a staining color, and still you can remove it. Now let's try this one other test, and this test will involve pretty much going on and on and on and rubbing the paper with the brush, and then we can have a look at the texture. So how long will it take for this paper to start giving us those little lumps, you know, the little sort of deteriorating pretty much. So I'll try and do this on the red area here. So I'm not going to speed up that process, just so that those of you who are watching this know how long it would take, if it would ever happen. Let's have a look. So here I am going over and over and over and over. I'm starting to catch little bits of paper already, and see, you can probably see on the brush, yeah, there's more and more and more of them as I keep rubbing. So you can see that even though it stays perfectly smooth right in the beginning, you definitely don't want to be, may I notice, just like with most papers, you don't want to be going over and over. So now, to do the biggest test, I am going to create a little painting. Now I will just show you a very quick version of it. If you would like to see a full step-by-step tutorial of it with full explanations, then please check out my Patreon page, where I will have this video ready for you to watch. But here I'll just give you a little quick time lapse sort of a thing. So for this artwork, I'm going to use a mix of different paints, so watercolor, gouache, pencils, and so on. And I'll do a little really relaxing looking landscape. So here we go. Okay, so as a conclusion and a summary, what can I say about this paper? I told you guys in the beginning of the video, this is the first time I'm actually using it. So what I found out is that, in my opinion, for my personal likings, I probably would not use it for just plain old graphite pencil sketching, because there are plenty of other papers that would probably do a better job. Again, it's for my sort of a liking, because I do like to work with a lot of details. I do like to be able to blend things out perfectly. So graphite pencil, I'd probably reach out for something else. But if you have to do a preliminary sketch, you know, like I did for this little sketch here, you pretty much can't tell any difference. Now for something like soft pastels, again, I probably would be fine using pastels on top of, for example, painted surfaces or something like this, if I needed to do some extra details, or, you know, I wanted to create that multi-layered look. I probably would be okay using those, but I would not reach for this paper if I was to create a pastel or a charcoal drawing on its own. I'd probably go for either a pastel matte or maybe like a sugar gray paper if I'm going for a cheaper sort of a base to use. Working with a pen, I actually found using pen on this paper way cooler than using it on drawing paper or watercolor paper. So if I had to create a drawing, or in the future you might see a full-on pen tutorial on YouTube, for example, I would definitely go for this paper. I absolutely love the, you know, how much control you have over the pen. What about watercolor? Watercolor, I would say you have the attributes that can be pluses in some situations or minuses in others. If you like to work on very large, very sort of a murky kind of colors, where you like to use very traditional watercolor style, probably stick to watercolor paper. But if you are creating florals, or if you want to create, you know, some kind of a layering effects and things like that, I think this paper is definitely a good for, you know, trying that out. So gouache and acrylics, I would say definitely give it a go if you like using gouache and acrylics. So I prefer to use my acrylics on board. Just I like having a sort of a heavier, thicker base. Again, that's just me personally. I don't really use acrylics on paper. But if I needed to work out some color compositions or something like this, this is probably better than most other papers that I would have tried with acrylics. And gouache, again, it works perfectly for gouache as well. In fact, I like gouache on this paper more than I actually like working with it on watercolor paper. And that's what I pretty much would have been using previously, either drawing paper or watercolor paper. So this mixed media definitely is a go for the gouache. And you can actually see here just how lovely and flat this paper went. I didn't have to flatten it out or anything like this, so just instantly as it dried, it just went flat. I also really liked the effects that I could create with my sort of a mixed media that I usually go for, you know, like watercolor, pencil and gouache, and sometimes I add acrylic as well. So yeah, again, if you'd like to see a full tutorial with, you know, me talking through as I'm painting what I'm doing and why, then please join the Patreon. It's already available there. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully introduced another base for you to use for your sketches, and I definitely will be using more of this in my sketching. You'll probably be seeing it again in some nearby tutorials. Again, this is not sponsored in any way. I just got this and I thought I'd share my experimentation with you today. Thank you very much, guys, for watching my videos. It means a lot to me. Please give this video a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't, to see more videos coming up. And I would like to say a big thank you to all of my patrons who are already supporting me on Patreon. You guys trialing out all of these materials and things like that can be expensive sometimes, so this is a great help from you for me to be able to try those things and show you what it's like, so that then you know exactly what you might like or might not like to get for yourself. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.